We are back. It is the Joe Holka Show, presented by Line Movement. What's up, everyone? I honestly still get butterflies every single time I go live on a Sunday morning. It is so much fun, honestly, just to get like an early start, kind of work through some of this stuff with you guys. We're a team. It's a community here, so I appreciate everyone that's here on a Sunday morning. Hope everyone that used to come last year comes back, sticks around. We got a lot of really exciting stuff going on. Of course, if you've been following along, LINEMOVEMENT.com. That's where my kind of primary focus has been over the last couple months. But finally, we get to sit down and talk some football. We're going to walk through a little bit of DFS. Of course, I've got some awesome stuff to show you, some free stuff to show you. If anyone's here watching on Twitch, I think we got about 29 people on Twitch. Come join us on YouTube, guys. This is going to be kind of the home where the community can continue to grow. It's going to get us in front of a lot more eyes overall. So one of the cool things about being on YouTube versus Twitch was kind of nice in some ways, I guess, because we were able to get the Twitch Primes going, all that stuff. I could give you guys that data sheet that I used to make available and got to kind of provide you guys value in that way. But the cool thing is, which we'll get into, I'm just giving it all away for free now. So we might as well be on YouTube because more people can find us on YouTube, right? So if you're on Periscope, come join us on YouTube. If you're on Twitch, come join us on YouTube. There's links everywhere, easy to find. So that's one thing. So we'll go through that. If you go to linemovement.com, the data sheet that I used to make available to all my Twitch subscribers, it's free now, guys. So I'll show you guys how to get there. It's very simple. It's in the resources tab, NFL data table. We're going to be doing a lot of really cool tools and stuff like that at Line Movement. So hopefully you guys will go over there. Absolutely free. So that's exciting stuff. Week one, it's been a good week overall. We got to talk to Rich Rebar about some matchups. We got to talk to Matt Harmon about some wide receivers. Mike Tagliere kind of gave us his best plays of the week. So make sure you're checking out all the videos that I have going throughout the week on the Joe Holka Show. Also, we are in podcast form for the first time, which is really exciting as well. Check my pinned tweet for that. It's something that I've probably been putting off a little bit too long. I know there's a lot of people that listen to these shows while they're working out, whatever it is. So I think that'll be good to have the podcast going up. YouTube is our home base. This is where the chat is going to be. So if you're on Twitch right now, I know there's still some people over there and you have some questions, again, come join us on YouTube. A couple of familiar faces in the chat, which is always nice to see. Chris Clark, Nick, what's going on, guys? It's Mookie. Mookie's been here, I think, for every stream since we went over to YouTube. Obviously, a big supporter for a long time. What's going on, Mookie? Always bringing us a lot of fire in the chat. Appreciate you. I know Jordan's in here with the Line Movement channel admin. Guys, we're going to be going live for Line Movement at 11 a.m. Eastern time as well with Peter Overzet, Dieter Kurtenbach, which will be a lot of fun. If you guys don't know Dieter's someone that has been around kind of the major media football space for a long time. He worked for Fox Sports. He's doing some stuff, kind of some more local type of radio types of thing. This guy, wait until you hear this guy's voice, probably knows more about sports betting in terms of NFL than anyone I've met in a really long time. So excited to chat with Dieter. Peter always brings some entertainment, some fire. So that'll be a lot of fun. We do have the Tilt Space show that will be every night, or every Sunday night, I should say, at 6:30 p.m. So if you've been kind of walking through the slate all morning, you're watching football, maybe things don't go so well, come tilt with me, Peter Overzet. Michael Leone from Established Run will join us as well. It's just going to be a lot of fun, guys. We did enter the Super Contest in Vegas, so I'll save all that for the Tilt Space tonight. But all those shows will be on the Line Movement YouTube channel. So if you see Jordan in the chat here, I'm sure he'll drop a link at some point. Make sure you follow Line Movement, hit that bell over there so that if you see us go live over there, you can join us. We'll be moving right over there after this stream ends. I think that's mostly it for the news and notes. If you're here for the first time on YouTube, do me a favor, toss a like on this video, guys. Share, subscribe, all of those things as we kind of make our transition from Twitch. I'd really appreciate it. That's something that helps me out a lot. And drop a comment, all of those things. So much appreciated. Honestly, guys, what's nice about, we don't worry about Twitch, Line Movement, it's all free, so we don't worry about subscriptions. We just bring value. We have fun as a community. The one way you can give back to me is with those likes, with those shares. If you're downloading the podcasts every week, there'll be probably 3 or 4 up there. Obviously, another 3 or 4 on the Line Movement podcast feed as well. As once that's up, drop us a rating or review. That type of stuff really goes a long way, so we can continue to give you guys all this stuff for free. Mikey Boy G, what's going on, man? Justin Rao, again, a lot of familiar faces. Mike Ramos. Guys, if you haven't checked out any of Matt Ramos, if you haven't checked out any of Matt's articles that he's been dropping on LINEMOVEMENT.com, you're missing out. This guy is probably the biggest hidden gem we ever could have found from a sports betting perspective, doing a lot of DFS stuff for us as well. DFS, golf, DFS, NFL. Matt, appreciate you being with us, man. Steven Thacker, Chris Hinshaw, Eric Frenchman in the chat. What's up, Eric Frenchman? Seen a lot of names coming over from Twitch. I appreciate you guys making that transition. Cody Huffman in the chat. What's up, man? This makes me so happy. I can't believe it's. There was times where I thought we weren't going to get here in week 1, right? So this is great. Almost 200 concurrent viewers. Amazing. Another 35 over on Twitch, another 14 on Periscope. Guys, if you have any questions, make sure and drop them in the chat. We're going to go position by position. We have time. We've got well over an hour to get through all of this with all of the, I guess, news that is kind of dropping along the way. The only thing that I've seen that's super relevant so far is that Mike Williams will in fact play. We got the Schefter bomb about 13 minutes ago from that. Flash U, what's up, man? How's it going? Big Show Brandon. BSB in the chat. BSB made the move over to YouTube. What's up, BSB? How's it going, man? Wig says he switched over from Twitch. Appreciate you, man. Ben Points, Cody Huffman, of course, like I mentioned. Who else we got in here? Austin Davis, Ryan Wade, Mike Tagliere. What's up, Mike? Mike, I was just going and kind of looking through our chat, right? Because that was 3 days ago now. I still think a lot of the stuff we said on that kind of quick 15-minute segment that's over on Line Movement YouTube channel, I think a lot of it's still really relevant, man. I feel pretty good. We're going to talk a little bit about, obviously, the running back value that we have. I think Mike and I are on the same page that if you're playing cash games, someone like Antonio Gibson, we'll get into it, makes some sense. I think he makes a reasonable fade in tournaments, but we'll get into that as well. Yeah, no BSB emotes on YouTube, man. We can get them, though. It's baby steps, right? We started a new company. There's a lot of things going on. Emotes, again, I finally got the emotes set on Twitch. We moved over to YouTube. I'm the worst. BSB, we'll figure it out, man. I'm glad you're here, man. John Bradenberg, Philly backfield. We'll get there, my friend. There's a lot to talk about. Mikey Boyd G asking about Boston Scott. All right, guys. So ownership, yes, that should be updated shortly. There will be an ownership tab as well, or column, I should say, on the NFL data table. Yeah, I thought Boston Scott became chalk once we heard about Sanders. He's the only one we really missed on that show. Yeah, I mean, on a Thursday night, I think that's pretty good, man. A lot of stuff can become irrelevant in a couple of days. So, yeah, Mike's going to be joining me for an off-stream segment every other week, which will go out over on the YouTube channel for Line Movement. So if you see Jordan in here chatting along the way, make sure you follow Line Movement YouTube channel as well. You get this new camera this year. Is it just YouTube Extra HD Flash? I'm glad you mentioned it, man. It is a new camera. I upgraded a few things, which is kind of nice. I kind of go back. I've had a few videos that I recorded during quarantine. I was a little bit productive, I guess. But those videos with my old camera and old setup, drastically different than the new setup. So it's exciting, man. There's a lot of new stuff that I'll get to show you guys. I know you guys saw the intro, all of that. But you guys aren't here for that kind of stuff. But we should get into this, right? So the one thing that I really want to show you guys right off the hop is this data sheet I keep talking about, right? So at linemovement.com, very easy to find. You go to the resources tab, you go to NFL data table. This is something that will be updating throughout the week. We do have ownership in here. Thank you, Jordan. Thank you, James McCool. James McCool is actually someone, he's our head of analytics at Line Movement. He put a lot of this together, right? Some of the stuff is coming from different sources. We have some next-gen stats in here. We have some other types of things. Obviously, when we're talking about wide receiver, we can't talk about wide receiver without giving a shout-out to Josh Hermsmeyer. Air yards, weighted opportunity rating, something that I definitely emphasize a ton for DFS. So shout-out Josh. We have a nice feed here of some of the data that he has on his site, airyards.com. Make sure if you want kind of a downloadable version of some of that stuff, make sure you check out his site. But guys, what's awesome about this, outside of it being free, is all these things that I think really matter at each position, right? So I think that that's something that if you want to play DFS and be successful at it, I think there's a lot of times where we get a little bit too far into the weeds, right? I think that if you can narrow it down to the things that we know are predictable long term, and then we can just try and play a little bit of the game theory side of it. At least that's what I like to do. I think that people that really get too deep into this matchup versus this matchup, this cornerback is going to shut down this wide receiver. I don't know, guys. I think that there's times for that, and there's definitely a place for it. Context is good. I'm not saying that context isn't good, but I do think that overall we want to be focusing on the things that we know matter, right? So that's what we try to do with this data sheet. So if you guys have any questions about what any of these columns mean as we're going through, definitely drop them in the chat. I'll do my best. We're going to get a key on here at some point to kind of, I'll probably do a video actually to walk through what some of this stuff is. But hey, we're it's week 1. We're working through it, right? It's a work in progress. We'll get there. Gibson and Scott together viable in cash. Jason, we'll get to running back shortly. We're going to start with quarterback, I think. Andrew says, thanks for all the great information. Thanks for being here, Andrew. More than enough, my friend. More than enough. We got people asking Tags in the chat. Tags is nice enough to be here and hang out with us. Appreciate you, Tags. I know you probably have a busy morning, my friend. All right, so we got about 265 people here live. Love it. Before we dive into it, drop a like on this video. Consider subscribing. This is where you'll find the majority of my football work. The rest of it will be at the Line Movement YouTube channel. So quarterback, guys. So I think that it's pretty obvious if we wanted to pay all the way up, you can make it work with Lamar Jackson. He's 8,100 on DraftKings. He's 9,300 on FanDuel. But I think that on FanDuel in particular, at least the lineups that I've built, it's pretty easy to get there with some of the value we have on DraftKings. We'll talk about the running backs, I promise. It's kind of the elephant in the room, right? Like, should you pay down for one of those guys? But Lamar Jackson at 8,100 does just give you, I think, such a large tier gap from some of these other guys. 61 rushing yards is what we have projected for him right now. We've seen him hit that multiple times. And against Cleveland, I think this team could absolutely roll in this spot. I love Mark Andrews. Obviously, a little bit of a tougher matchup for Hollywood Brown, which we'll get to. But I love the condensed target share for Baltimore. I think there's times where last year we saw them get way ahead and have to dial it back a little bit. If we see any regression whatsoever from this offense, it could actually turn into a good thing in some ways because we might get some more volume out of these guys overall. So I think if you're paying up, pretty clearly Lamar Jackson, I don't think we really need to talk too much more about that. I think a more interesting conversation is some of these cheaper quarterbacks. So Tyrod Taylor, I think that if you wanted to make an argument for someone like Mitchell Trubisky at 5,400 on DraftKings, he's someone I think is at least somewhat interesting. If you wanted to play, I guess we haven't had to talk about him a ton yet, but Cam Newton, like it's really tough for me to get there personally because we know Cam Newton, like we think about what we used to see from him, right? Now he's in New England, of course, but the weapons, not fantastic. Does he give us a little bit on the ground? We got him like 21.4 rushing yards. That's pretty solid. 6,100 is a tough price tag, though, when we have guys like Tyrod at 56, who I think have a pretty similar expectation, similar team total for those guys, pretty similar spread overall. I mean, the rushing yards very similar. I think the issue I have with Tyrod is this game makes me a little bit nervous overall. We have offensive line concerns on both sides of the ball. We have two pretty strong pass rushes, which is something that I think is really important. So when we're looking at the quarterback position, if anyone's new, I think that the one thing that we have to focus on, what is going to limit efficiency? Because we want efficiency at quarterback, ideally. That's what we want. That's what's going to lead to fantasy points. So what I think is going to be something that drastically impacts efficiency is going to be if these quarterbacks are going to see pressure. And so we're going to look at the offensive line. We're going to look at the defensive line. There's always going to be some kind of tougher matchups. There's going to be some guys that handle it well. I think Deshaun Watson's the name I always bring up. He's a quarterback that actually handles pressure relatively well. But there's some quarterbacks that don't. Will Joe Burrow be someone that can handle pressure? I mean, we saw everything that he did at the college level. He's 5,800. The Chargers pass rush, it freaks me out a little bit, guys. I don't know. I don't know if he's going to be a week one type of guy. He's not in my player pool currently. I prefer to get up to kind of the Tyrod, Cam Newton range if we wanted to go on the super cheap side. I actually think that, I hate to say this, I don't know if Tags is still in here, but Mitchell Trubisky at 5,400 is super interesting. I heard some smart people talking about maybe this is naked quarterback week. I don't typically do that. I'll say that right off the hop. I don't typically go naked quarterback if I can help it, because I think it limits your ceiling quite a bit. But if you happen to back into one of these cheap guys that maybe he runs one in, maybe he throws for one, maybe he gets you to 20 points on DraftKings, and then you're able to maybe not play one of these cheaper running backs. I think that's huge. Maybe you're able to upgrade at something like tight end. Maybe you're able to get up to a guy like Mark Andrews when everyone's punting. I think that's the kind of stuff that's really valuable. So I think that Lamar Jackson, we can agree, is kind of in a tier on his own. But I like this cheaper tier because of what it does to my roster so far this morning. But I do think that the middle tier is a little bit more interesting the more I kind of dug into it if you're stacking. So if you're playing some larger field tournaments, again, if you're here for the first time, if you're watching on Twitch, we still have 41 people over on Twitch. Come over to YouTube. That's where we're going to be kind of interacting with the chat as we progress through here. But the mid-range, Kyler Murray, Josh Allen, Russell Wilson for a little bit more. I do have some interest in a guy like Josh Allen, and I'm already being called like a Josh Allen truther, which is completely insane. But I love the weapons. I think that this Buffalo team is going to be very good this year. I don't have a lot of respect for the Jets, of course. This ownership, not that we really care a ton about ownership at quarterback, but it can, if you end up on the Josh Allen stack, someone like Josh Allen, Diggs, someone like John Brown, that stack, maybe you add the tight end on the other side with Herndon. It's pretty cheap. It should be at least relatively low owned as a core group. And we get this rushing floor from Josh Allen, which I love. I probably played Josh Allen. I think Jake Seeley kind of gave me some crap about this earlier in the week. I played Josh Allen probably more than anyone last year, which at times was great. At times it's not fun to watch. I get it. But it's this rushing floor, guys. So Kyler Murray and Josh Allen. Kyler Murray, this game I think is kind of interesting if you're trying to be really contrarian, playing larger field stuff. Again, I guess I forgot to mention it, but I typically play some of the smaller field mid stakes, so like the $1,500 entry, that sort of thing. This week we're actually putting a team in the 1,500, me, Leone, and Overzet. So again, we'll be doing that live Tilt Space show at 6:30 on Sundays. So join us for that. Kind of as the slate is winding down. Maybe we have a sweat. Maybe we lost it all. I have no idea. But I think that it's interesting to kind of go after this mid-range when I think a lot of people are going to pay all the way up for Lamar Jackson or pay all the way down for someone like Tyrod, especially on FanDuel where you can kind of make it work. Let's see if I'm kind of ignoring the chat, going on my quarterback rant here. Nothing but love, Joe. What's up, Tags? God, dude, I'm glad you're here hanging out, man. Appreciate it. 7,100 left for quarterback. Best play. All right, let's look at some pricing then. 7,100, I would imagine, is a pretty tough range, but Russell Wilson right there. These are the guys that I struggle with, and if I have like a massive hole in my DFS game, it's that sometimes I scroll right over some of these guys like Drew Brees, Matt Ryan, these non-mobile quarterbacks. They have great weapons though. So I've heard some smart people mention that Matt Ryan, when he's not under pressure, can just pick apart some of these defenses. And I think that the condensed target share in Atlanta is super interesting, actually. It's a very stackable game. I think that if you were going to play someone like Matt Ryan, it would be a game stack scenario for me. I'm not really big on just the single stack Matt Ryan to Julio. I get that it can work, but you're spending so much to get to Matt Ryan anyway at 6,700. I think you got to get a little bit different in your roster construction the rest of the way. Overstacking, onslaughts, that sort of thing, I think is really interesting. Allen Robinson is going off. Yoshi D says, Okuda out. Yoshi D, how's it going, man? Are you coming over from Twitch? Your name's a little bit familiar as well. That's a really strong take on Allen Robinson. I think that's what I kind of like about that stack, guys. I know we're not necessarily talking stacks yet, but the weapons that we can add to the Trubisky stacks, obviously we have some stuff on the other side as well. So no Galladay. Do we see a condensed target share in favor of someone like Marvin Jones? Maybe. 5,400 does a lot to my teams right now. Adding in Allen Robinson, that ceiling, I think Allen Robinson's pretty clearly one of the best plays in that range. So it's interesting. At quarterback, though, I think it's relatively straightforward. I think this mid-range, if you're playing large field tournaments, is super interesting. Kyler, Josh Allen. Russ is kind of in a weird salary range. I haven't been able to make a really Russ team that I like yet on DraftKings. And then it's these cheap guys. It's Cam Newton. It's Tyrod Taylor. It's Mitchell Trubisky. If you're playing large field, I like the thought of playing Mitchell Trubisky We know that Detroit plays a lot of man coverage, which can lead to more rushing yards for some of these running quarterbacks. So I think that part of it alone is interesting with Trubisky. So that's kind of where I'm at on quarterback, guys. Any quarterback stuff, and then I promise we'll get into what everyone wants to hear about these running backs, these cheap running backs. Never naked in GPP. That's an extra 2, 3, 4 guesses to hit the nuts. Hey, that's it. Gavin, what's going on, man? Nice to see you back with us. So Gavin makes a great point. If you're going naked at quarterback, and this is the argument for stacking in general, right? Like I'm trying to be right once or twice. I mean, let's go full screen for this. I got to make this very clear. So I'm wrong a lot. So if I'm wrong a lot, wouldn't it be better if I was going to limit the decisions I'm making, the amount of decisions? So that's what stacking does for us. So a naked quarterback, if everyone wants to talk about this as naked quarterback week, you better feel really confident that you can get a lot of other stuff right. You know what I mean? One strategy that I at least thought was interesting, I heard Leone bring this up earlier this week, is, and I think we'll see it kind of on some of these slates with Patrick Mahomes. If he's so expensive, we know the weapons are great. You can kind of stack up basically what you would do with like a Kansas City stack, and maybe you play the cheap running quarterback and hope he backs into 20, and you don't have the nuclear Mahomes game. So something like this, I think if it really changes your roster, that's what we have to think about, right? So on this slate in particular, if you like the Lamar Jackson, Hollywood Brown, Mark Andrews stack, maybe you add one more pass catcher to that. Maybe you don't play Lamar. Maybe you play Tyrod at 5,600 and you save $2,000 of salary, and then you're able to upgrade other places. And you hope that Lamar has his 3 touchdowns, whatever, his 70 yards on the ground, but you just hope Tyrod can get you, I don't know, 70% of that. And then you're in a great spot from a roster construction standpoint, right? So I think that is a really interesting way to attack large field. I don't know if it's really something that I would ever recommend in a small field tournament. And I do think that overall small field tournaments are kind of the way to go. I'm not trying to beat 100,000 people, guys. Again, going back to I'm wrong a lot. You got to be perfect to win one of those things. So let's move on to running back. So everyone wants to talk about these cheap guys. I think that overall, if you're considering someone like Boston Scott, projecting him for about not even 14 touches, if you're considering someone like Antonio Gibson, he's 4K. I understand it. I understand it for sure. He's someone that's going to be active in the passing game. We got him projected for, yikes. Maybe this is a little bit low. I've got him projected for about 13 touches as well. I think if he gets to like that 15, 16, 17 mark, it's fine. But guys, the biggest issue with playing these guys, these running backs that have an 18 touch ceiling, that's where you're giving up. You're giving up the ceiling at the position that is the easiest to project. It's really not debatable. A running back is by far the easiest position to project volume. And volume is all that matters at running back. You won't hear me talk about running back matchups a ton unless it's a narrative that's leading to ownership. So like we'll talk about Josh Jacobs. We'll get there. I'm not interested. I think it's a pretty easy fade, honestly, the Boston Scott thing. I'm going to try and get different elsewhere. I get it. If you're playing cash games, Tags made this point on our video earlier this week. If you're playing cash games, sure. If Antonio Gibson at 4K gets in the end zone, you're feeling great, right? Because you're able to upgrade a wide receiver. You're probably able to upgrade off of maybe one of those really cheap quarterbacks. There's not a ton of value at wide receiver, guys. We'll get there. So maybe, I understand it. It's not that I don't understand the play. I just think anytime that you're giving up the ceiling from someone like Christian McCaffrey, Dalvin Cook, and then we have all these guys like Joe Mixon, Aaron Jones, Alvin Kamara, like under 8K, that's volume we know we're getting, right? So that's one thing about week one. I think that it's one of the better weeks to be contrarian because people are going to start building lineups, especially this week in particular. We've mentioned on basically every show I've been on all week, the pricing's a little bit tighter than we normally see in a week one. Normally we get that layup wide or running back that is going to get his 18, 19, 20 touches, and we get him at 3,500, 4K, something really low, right? Just free square, hashtag free square. But this week feels a little bit different. So I like the balanced approach a little bit, guys. I really do. especially with these guys like Joe Mixon, 6,700. I'm going to lock in 22 touches for that. I like it. Dalvin Cook, 7,900. He's got his deal. This Green Bay game is gross. There's not going to be a ton of scoring in this Green Bay game overall, probably. Like the NFC North in general is just kind of a gross division. So if we're just going to skew towards volume, we know where the ball's going in Minnesota, right? It's going to Dalvin Cook. It's going to Adam Thielen. There's so much value in that. I think that's something that a lot of people make some big time mistakes on, is they think that they have to play these high total games. But if it's going to be spread out, what's the point? We need the volume, guys. Like, this is fantasy football. This is DFS. Like, we need the volume. I'm not trying to play this guy I think is going to get 3 targets in a high total game. Maybe he's not even going to be on the field in 3 wide receiver sets, something like that, right? Running back, it's by far the most important thing. So yes, on every show that I will do, probably for weeks and weeks and weeks until Christian McCaffrey is like 11, 12K. Yes, it's okay to find a way to play Christian McCaffrey. It's fine. It is. It really is fine. I'm going to give you permission. It's okay to play Christian McCaffrey, guys. It really is. I'm going to make it work on FanDuel, on DraftKings. He's 10K. He's going to be high owned. Don't care. It's just like every single week we see like people like back themselves into these suboptimal running back plays. Nothing correlates in terms of ownership. Running back ownership correlates better to fantasy points than any other position. There's a reason for that. It's not hard to figure out which guys are going to touch the ball, right? So looking past the Christian McCaffrey thing, I think an interesting conversation to have is Josh Jacobs. Josh Jacobs is 6,800 on DraftKings. They made it difficult, right? I hate playing these guys that don't catch balls. I really do. 21 touches, not even 2 receptions is the current projection right now. It's a reasonable total. It's a tight spread. Carolina, I mean, say what you want about Carolina. This is a fantastic matchup for Josh Jacobs if you care about that sort of thing at running back. Fantastic. If Josh Jacobs scores 2 touchdowns today, you can probably assume that I lost all my money, which is okay. Again, coming back to the ceiling. I want ceiling at running back, guys. I don't care about the floor. I can get floor at other positions very, very easily. I don't play these guys that are going to – I don't play these Tariq Cohen type of guys. Maybe it's a bad example because maybe he sees a little bit more volume today. I don't play these James White 10-touch-a-game type of players because, sure, they get in the end zone perfect. They touch the ball 10 times. Like, these guys are such dogs to get you the bonus plus the touchdown plus 5 or 6 catches. And that's what you need on DraftKings. So I'm not really there on a lot of those type of plays. I will go other directions. So James Robinson is another name that people were talking about in the chat. It's an interesting one because I think that team is just not going to be very good overall. 4K. Like the ceiling for these guys. James Robinson, Antonio Gibson, Boston Scott. I think that Boston Scott probably has the highest ceiling of those guys. I think that's kind of where I'm at on that. I think I'm probably... It's hard. It's hard to play a guy like Boston Scott when we know there's going to be some sort of rotation there, right? So I'm probably not going to get too cute. Back, I guess I kind of skipped over the Josh Jacobs thing. This price tag is really nice. I was struggling a little bit with it early in the week. The touches are there. He's probably a lock to get in the end zone, get that bonus for you. He's going to be high owned. I think on FanDuel, 8,200 is a little bit tougher for me to get there when I got Kamara and Dalvin Cook for a very similar price point. On DraftKings, it's tougher. On DraftKings, you're saving $1,000 off of Alvin Kamara almost. Or sorry, you're saving about $500 off of Kamara. You're saving about $1,000 off of Dalvin Cook. So I think it's a harder conversation on DraftKings, even though he doesn't set up as well for that as well. Sean Binns, Washington front 7 is legit. That's the thing. Washington overall, I think, is in a really great spot for fantasy today, as weird as that sounds, because the Philly has all these injuries on the offensive line. We'll talk about Deshaun Jackson shortly. I think it's a really interesting conversation to have because both of these offensive lines aren't very good. Both these defensive lines are. So we've got a team like Washington. I believe they're 2K on DraftKings. Let's see. Yeah, 2K on DraftKings. That's a tough one to get away from. I think on FanDuel, you can make an argument for some of these other cheaper defenses as well, like the Colts, which we'll get to. I don't think that we have to completely go there. I'm 100% not playing two of these cheap running backs. Let me make that very clear. I'm not interested in playing two of them. I think that if we're going to try and play one of them, depending on how many rosters you're making, you play the guy that you think has the best chance to not see a rotation. I think Antonio Gibson is at least interesting because of his skill set, right? Like, used to be a wide receiver. So that's really interesting. Oops. I'm clicking on things that Jordan sent me. I don't even know what that was. So we're looking at guys that can catch passes, of course, but also like the ceiling from these running backs. So one guy in the mid-range that I think is super interesting is if we were to look at Kenyon Drake. I think that Kenyon Drake is someone that might go a little bit under-owned overall. I think that if you wanted to like get deep into Kenyon Drake, I think that he's someone we saw overall Kenyon Drake be someone that has that ceiling. This offense is someone that this offense is one that just has so much upside overall, I think. I think that it's going to be one of the ones that no one wants to play against San Francisco today. I think it's one that, like, we want to, like, someone told me to have something on my face. Well, you guys aren't going to let me know in the chat if I have something on my face. It's a donut. Relax. It's the only thing I've eaten today. Jordan sends me a text. Is there toothpaste on your face? I tried to just nonchalant change it. Yeah, I'm just going to own it. I'll wear it. I got donut on my face, guys. No free ads, though. Redskins corners depleted. So let's talk about Deshaun Jackson, because I think that's a wide receiver one that really we should dive into a little bit before we get into this mid-range at running back. The thing that I really struggle with of these deep threats is if we really do think that there's going to be some pressure, does he have time to get all the way downfield? I don't know. Ian Warner, thanks for finally getting that shit off your mouth. Oh, man. Week 1, guys. Give me a break. Give me a break. Marlon Mack should be a positive game script. All right, let's tie a bow on some of these running back plays, and then we can get into more exciting positions. Marlon Mack at 5,300 at 12 touches. No thanks. Like Jonathan Taylor. So, like, I'll say this. If you're playing a large field tournament, the only way that these guys make sense, and you might think I'm a complete sick fish for saying this, I don't hate the idea of playing these guys together and give yourself a different roster than all these guys that are going to play all these other cheap running backs. So we have no idea what this split's going to be like, guys. This Marlon Mack, Jonathan Taylor split. But if we back into 35 rush attempts against Jacksonville, we get a touchdown from one of them, we get a 100-yard bonus from the other, I think it's at least okay. I don't think it's anything you would ever consider in single entry or small field. So I'll say that. I think that Joe Mixon at 6,700 is a reasonable pivot for sure off of Josh Jacobs, because we know he's going to catch more passes. So there's not any competition there. I'm trying at that range, guys. I'm really trying to get to Alvin Kamara. I don't care about the matchup. I know Tampa Bay is really strong at defending running backs, all of that. I think that Kamara, like, I'm not worried about the back. I know I sent out a tweet earlier today. We talked about that with Jake. I'm not worried about the back. It's an injection or whatever that he got last year as well. No issues. He looked great in practice from everything that we've seen. So I think that Kamara is someone at 7,200 that just seems too cheap. The guy was hurt all year last year, guys. He was hurt all year last year. So that's, I guess, the struggle with Joe Mixon is if you have to save 500, sure, makes sense. But I'm trying to get up to this Cook, McCaffrey, Kamara range. Like, you can make lineups with two of those guys for sure if you're willing to not play Lamar Jackson. Oh, I can't believe I just did 30 minutes of a stream with donut on my face. Where are you on that one, producer Jordan? So good. So good. All right, let me see if I missed any other running back stuff in the chat here. Oh, Derek Sisk asking about Todd Gurley. Okay, let's talk about Todd Gurley. Before we do, though, guys, 65 people on Twitch. I'm reading the chat on YouTube now if you guys missed earlier in the stream, so make sure you make your way over here. If you're on Periscope, we got about 17 people watching on Twitter/Periscope. Join us on YouTube. Holka is rattled. I'm not rattled, man. I'm excited. It's week 1, man. We got football to watch today. I get to sit on the couch, watch some football, make some DFS teams soon. I get to hang out with my boy Dieter and Peter Overzet shortly. If you haven't checked out the Line Movement YouTube channel, I'll be going live directly after this stream over there. So make sure you check that out. 11 a.m. Eastern time to noon Eastern time every Sunday. We'll be talking a little bit more sports betting, a little more prop bets over there, a little more DFS on my show, of course. So that's where we're at. If you're here for the first time, guys, make sure you drop me a like on this video. It actually really matters. So if like people are coming over to YouTube for the first time, they see that this video is a bunch of likes, we're live, we'll get more people. More people will find us on YouTube, which is really nice. Consider subscribing if you're coming over from Twitch. That's the best way to support me for free. Speaking of free, this is something that I made available to all of you guys for free. LineMovement.com, resources, NFL data table, everything at each position I think really matters, and it's free. There's ownership in here. There's everything, right? So that's what we're doing. We're just going to give you guys all the value for free. Is that cool? All right, let's move on to wide receiver, guys. This is a tough slate at wide receiver, in my opinion. I think it's really tough. Deshaun Jackson. So we talked about it. I struggle playing these deep threats when I think that their offensive line is trash. I'll say it. And I struggle playing deep threats at 23% ownership. But I don't know if this is going to be, is this going to be Will Fuller? Probably not. The Will Fuller chalk week where he gets dropped a 40 bomb on us. I hope not, because I struggle a little bit with playing Deshaun Jackson at 23%. I think he's a fantastic play because he's underpriced and there's not a lot of value. I think that's what it comes down to, right? What's the website? LineMovement.com, bro. Where you been? I'm just kidding, Blake. LOL, the Will Fuller chalk week. Not a good time, man. Not a good time. Whatever happened to Kev's picks? Did he retire? Kev's got a lot of different stuff going on, man. It was fun doing some videos with him. Maybe he'll be back. We'll try and get Kev back. Everyone tweet at Kevin McClellan right now, Sports Geek. Tell him that we want him back. All right, so Deshaun Jackson at 4,900. I get the savings. I get all of that. The one thing that I always look at, yards per route run. Last year, 4.2 yards per route run. That is insane. We see a lot of some of the best wide receivers, I guess, look past kind of a smaller sample here with Marvin Hall. Michael Thomas, Stephon Diggs, Julio Jones, Devonta Adams, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Terry McLaurin. If I end up fading Deshaun Jackson on my main team today and he goes off, I'm going to feel really dumb, but we'll see. Obviously that secondary, maybe they just can't stick with them, right? And it doesn't matter. All it takes is just good protection one time. Deshaun Jackson gets behind everyone and that fade is all over. So it's interesting. Do you realize Jacobs is facing the worst team against the run and Luke is gone, McCoy gone, Allison is gone, fade if you want. I'm not saying Josh Jacobs is not a good play. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying I don't care a lot about defense at running back and he doesn't catch balls. If he goes out there and catches 4 or 5 balls today, I'm totally. So at the top end of wide receiver, guys, do we have preference on Devonta Adams versus Julio Jones? So Devonta Adams, who else is going to get the ball in Green Bay? Number one. I guess I struggle a little bit with the total there. I went to a Green Bay, Minnesota game last year, and it was incredibly boring. I'll say that. But Devonta Adams at 7,300, the price is really strong. He's got to be one of the best plays up there for sure. Julio's an interesting one. We see Matt Ryan really perform well against defenses that don't pressure a ton. We could just see Julio go crazy today. So I think that conversation is interesting. I think that extra $500 you get, or the extra $400 you get from Devonta, is reasonable. I very rarely end up paying all the way up at wide receiver because of my approach at running back typically. But those would be the 2 top guys. I think this mid-range is the one that everyone should be focusing on today. It's Terry McLaurin. It's guys like let's get sort here so you guys don't have to try and picture this in your head. It's Terry McLaurin. It's guys like John Brown. It's Marvin Jones. It's DK Metcalf. What are we doing with those guys? If we want to pay a little bit more, sure. Someone mentioned Odell's super cheap. Someone mentioned earlier in the chat, Calvin Ridley at 6,100 is interesting. Stephon Diggs if you pay up. Like the 6K range, we'll get to that in a second. Let's stick down here. McLaurin, John Brown, Metcalf. It's strong, guys. It's really strong. And you're gonna need salary to get up from Deshaun Jackson and get there. Marquise Brown, a little bit cheaper. Marvin Jones at 5,500. What do we think about Marvin Jones without Kenny Golladay? I think that one is the one that's really interesting. So Marvin Jones without Kenny Golladay. I looked a little bit at the splits earlier. He gets the volume, right? My problem with Marvin Jones is that he can completely disappear at times, but I don't think we overthink this one at 5,500. in a good spot against Chicago. I think Marvin Jones is really strong today. Terry McLaurin, we know the upside. We know the quarterback that you're tying yourself to by playing Terry McLaurin. Matt Harmon, he just basically just told us that Terry McLaurin could be the next Allen Robinson. That's how good this guy is. And talent at wide receiver is something that matters more than at any position. So I think that Terry McLaurin at 5,600 versus Marvin Jones, it's going to be probably a pretty similar ownership. Guys, I think I prefer Terry McLaurin. I do. I think that DK Metcalf, if you're playing a Russ stack, that will be the scenario I back into some DK Metcalf. I think McLaurin's the guy in that range for me. If I was going to be paying down for someone like Deshaun Jackson, Marquise Brown, those are the other guys that I would consider in that range for sure. In the kind of mid-range, we mentioned Allen Robinson at 6,500. What do you guys think about Allen Robinson versus Stephon Diggs versus Tyler Lockett versus Adam Thielen? That's a tougher range for me right now. I want to get some a little bit of opinions in the chat here. Steve Boynton in the chat. What's up, Steve? Steve, you still all over Thielen, man? Steve came into the chat literally on Monday and was like, Adam Thielen is one of the best plays on the slate. Steve plays a lot of FanDuel, so that makes sense, yeah. So Thielen, 6,800 on FanDuel. Let's talk about some other guys in that range. Lockett, Edelman, Devontae Parker, Diggs. It's pretty similar. Wow, Allen Robinson, 7,200 on FanDuel. It's a great price. Is this team going to throw the ball a ton? I have no idea. Probably not. But when they do throw it, Thielen's going to be involved. So everyone seems to like Thielen in that range, huh? I like John Brown a lot and Stephon Diggs a lot. It's like I'd be shocked if I didn't end up with a stack from Buffalo today in that range. I think it's really interesting. Tyler Lockett. So Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf, those are guys I probably am only playing in a stack. I think there's better one-offs. I think Adam Thielen makes a fantastic one-off because I'm not playing Kirk Cousins. So that leads me a little bit towards guys like Thielen. I think Stephon Diggs makes a reasonable one-off too. These guys that can break a big play, these guys that can have the volume and still get there on their own, I think is interesting. Terry McLaurin, good one, a strong one-off, a little bit higher ownership than you want from a guy like that. But I think it's interesting. Calvin Ridley at 6,100. He's kind of in a weird salary range for me. I think at 6,100, I'm trying to get up to Diggs at 64 or Allen Robinson at 65. Or maybe just move down to Terry McLaurin at 5,600. Like Calvin Ridley at 6,100 is probably someone that I'm only going to stack up if I end up stacking the Atlanta-Seattle game. Maybe I have a rough stack and I can't afford Julio on the other side and I get Calvin Ridley on the other side. I think that makes sense. I think that makes sense for sure. Is Gibson a safe play or would you go Devin Singleton? I'm not a big Devin Singletary. Is that what you're mentioning, Robert? Yeah, I'm not a big Singletary guy. I think Gibson is fine. If you're playing cash games, if you really need the salary, he's fine. I'm going to try and get a little bit different. Again, guys, I think that week one, more than any week, is one of the best weeks to get contrarian in tournaments. This is like, it's one of these years, right, where we don't have preseason. We had a limited offseason. We had no preseason, obviously. We had a limited offseason. These guys are going to have to try and get back into it. So we think we know way more than we do right now in general. Like, in terms of the data, none of this stuff is going to stabilize for at least another 3 weeks. So Gavin said it right in the chat. Embrace the variance in week one, for sure. So I think that, like, trying to find these guys that maybe are similar plays, but you get half the ownership, a third of the ownership, I think is really smart. DJ Moore, Preston Williams. All right, let's go back to wide receiver. We'll dig a little bit deeper into some of these guys on that front. Devontae Parker, 6K, obviously some concerns there. Is he fully healthy? Preston Williams, 4,500. So like if we think that Preston Williams is in play at 4,500, you're probably telling me you don't think that Devontae Parker is going to be a factor whatsoever. So I would kind of agree with that. Let's see. I'm checking news here to see if I missed anything. Mike Evans could play, but will be on a pitch count. That's interesting. I guess at the top end, we didn't talk about Godwin, 7,300. What do we think about Godwin versus Adams versus Julio? Does Godwin like have one of those games where Tom Brady's just going to throw him 13 balls? I don't know. Interesting. Fade 4 p.m. exposure. Never that, really. Let me check and see what that's a good topic. Let's talk about that for a second, Daniel. I love when people bring up topics like this. So the 4 p.m. games, we have LA Chargers, Cincinnati Bengals. We have Tampa Bay, New Orleans Saints. We have Arizona, San Francisco. Okay, so it makes me like this Arizona, San Francisco game even more if we're talking about getting contrarian today. I think a lot of people are going to gravitate toward this Tampa Bay and New Orleans game, higher total. Some polarizing weapons there for sure. If you have lineups in trouble, like say that you have some of these stacks coming in the afternoon games and you didn't hit on some of your one-offs that we've talked about early, I think you pivot to Arizona and San Francisco. No one's going to play guys in this game. Kyler Murray, people just like want to, I guess, pound this narrative about wide receivers on new teams. Hopkins has these soft tissue injuries throughout training camp, that sort of thing. I don't know, guys. I think that that's a great leverage spot if you're in trouble. So I think that's interesting. Only 3 games in the afternoon. 3 of the best games to stack are in the 4 p.m. slate. Steve, always sharp. Always start sharp, Steve. We got 71 people on Twitch right now, guys. Let's get some of the Twitch people over here on YouTube. We're reading the chat on YouTube. We're going through some Q&A. We're still touching on wide receiver. I do think it's a really tough wide receiver week overall because we don't have any of those like cheaper guys in terms of value that really stand out. So these balanced lineups are really feeling like the way to go this morning. TMC Live, I came from Twitch. My man. TMC Live, consider subscribing, toss a like on this video. It actually does a really, really big difference for us on the back end, so I really appreciate it. Speaking of Twitch, Al Zeidenfeld, I don't like the change. Al, they wouldn't make me partner, man. I had to put my foot in the ground and go to the platform that actually brings me views, actually brings me new people. Everyone check out Al's live stream later on Twitch. Al's the man. Al's been doing great content on Twitch, YouTube, before basically anyone, right? I'm sure you guys all know Al. Appreciate you, man. Al, what do you think about, we're going to do this. Al, what do you think about the new intro? Right? Right? How good is that? Shout out to all the creatives at Line Movement. Nick Conklin, our creative director, is just throwing some bells and whistles on my stream. I got the new camera. It's good times, man. It's good times. Intro just gave me a seizure. Sorry, Steve. I'm glad you didn't give me the creator's email so I could get one made for me. Oh, man. Man, I don't know. Twitch is great. Maybe I'll do some hangouts over there eventually, but I'm going to try and focus on the YouTube chat for now. Bryce, he's ignoring the chat. What did I miss from Bryce? Does Arizona-San Francisco game scare you at the possibility of not being played? Not really. Is that a thing? Because of the air quality? Are they considering not playing that game? That's news to me. That music gave me happy feet. Yeah. I love it, man. So good. Shout out Harris Heller. All right, see you, Al. Talk to you later, man. Have a good week 1. When am I going to get to come on the cage match, man? I'm in for that for sure. It's looking good for Arizona game now. Okay, good to know. Awesome. We've been talking about this for 10 minutes. Air pressure steadily dropping. Interesting. Boston Scott or Chris Carson? Huh. Let's take a peek here. Chris Carson, 19 touches, couple catches. Yeah, I think it's Chris Carson. That's a hard one, man, because the pricing's so different, right? Cool. Sounds good, Al. We'll do it. We'll get it done. You got to take me down this year. I think I got lucky last year, though. It came down to the wire. I think I got like a random like garbage time touchdown to beat Al in the cage match last year. We'll have to figure something out. All right, someone's making fun of me because I'm missing stuff in the chat. Really, really sorry, boys. I'll try and see if I didn't miss anything. I was distracted because Al's so upset with me for being on YouTube now. Let's see. Is Janu Smith a must start? Different slate, so no, I don't think he's a must start. T.Y. Hilton thoughts. I guess we haven't really talked a lot about the Colts in general in this spot against this Jacksonville team that could, push for being one of the worst teams in the league, right? T.Y. Hilton, he kind of fits the mold of a guy that would have upside that isn't going to be as owned. We got him at 12%, so it's not as low as I thought, actually. Pretty decent sized favorite, nice total. I think T.Y. is fine, 5,800. I actually don't know if I agree with this. I think he'll be lower owned than some of these other guys in this range. Yeah. I like it, man. Thinking different at wide receiver. That's my style. I like it a lot. Hurst versus Hawkinson. I probably should move to tight end at some point. I just want to spend the most time on wide receiver because I think it's a really tough wide receiver week. Ruggs in all my tournament lineups. I like Ruggs, Yoshi. That's like the second or third thing that Yoshi has said in the chat that I thought was really sharp today. So appreciate you being with us, man. So if we were gonna try and find like really cheap wide receivers, right? I guess we haven't really talked about any of these guys that are super cheap. I think sometimes people are scared to play these rookies a little bit. He's only 5,100, but on FanDuel in particular, like Ruggs is 5,100 on FanDuel as well. I like that. I like that quite a bit. I think he's got a higher ceiling than Bryan Edwards. Bryan Edwards 4,500 on FanDuel, by the way. Some cheap. I think Henry Ruggs on FanDuel in particular is really interesting. I know he's probably more of a PPR guy in general, but you get the ball in that guy's hands, he can go. I like that. I like that quite a bit, man. That's sharp. Le'Veon Bell or Boston Scott? Never Le'Veon for me. I like Gasicki this year. Derek. I love me some Gasicki. We'll talk about him at tight end in a second. Is there anything else at wide receiver, guys? I think we touched on a lot. We talked about almost every player here. So just to like kind of tie a bow on wide receiver, and I think that this mid-range is really strong, right? So if you don't have the salary to get to like a guy like Metcalf, Ridley, that Terry McLaurin range, I think if you wanted to kind of go down a little bit and kind of get to, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what to do about Deshaun Jackson, guys. Tell me if I should play Deshaun Jackson or not. I keep going back and forth. At that ownership, it's tough for me. Are you going to put my Yahoo prices in that data sheet? Gavin, you're playing on Yahoo, man? Sharp. We could look into that. We could look into that for sure. Are we all going to get buried by post-hype Dante Pettis? That's going to suck. That could be. What's the Steve Boyton game stack of the week? I want to hear it. Man, Yahoo is actually pretty sick. I'm not ragging on Yahoo. Friend of the show, Matt Harmon, is a Yahoo guy. I can't hate on Yahoo. Matt would never come back on my show. Speaking of that, guys, if you're just coming in, we got 468 concurrent viewers right now, another 67 on Twitch. Do me a favor, guys. Toss a like on this video. Consider subscribing. Would really appreciate it. We got 179 likes. I love it. I'm not a math guy, but that's still pretty good. I appreciate you guys. If you found value today, if you've enjoyed this data sheet, it is free at linemovement.com. You go to resources, you go to NFL data table. I will be live in about a half an hour on the Line Movement YouTube channel as well with Peter Overzet and Dieter Kurtenbach. We're going to talk a little bit more sports betting, a little bit more player props. You'll see the link in the description also. If you want to join us over there, would really appreciate it. Let's talk tight end, guys. So someone mentioned Mike Gasicki. He's not going to be owned today. He runs a ton of routes. He's just one of those guys that is that freak athlete. We finally saw break out last year. He's 4,500. He is very cheap. I love me some Fitzmagic, you guys. Who's going to be my Fitzmagic this year? I think I played Fitzmagic and not John Brown, and Josh Allen more than anyone in the world last year. I'm not really on Gasicki, though, for the record. Not today. I think at tight end, to me, if you want to pay all the way down for Chris Herndon, I think it's okay. I guess the argument for not playing Chris Herndon is this team total, guys. So Chris Herndon, what do I have him at for catches right now? Let's see if I can find him. Anyways, I can't find him. But this low team total is my biggest concern, right? Like, take the Jets thing aside. Like, we know that the tight end position, we have to get touchdowns because there's not going to be as much volume. So I think that team total that's sitting around 16.5 on blitzbet.eu, that's tough for me at the tight end position, even if he's 3,300. Someone in the chat mentioned Doyle. Corey Park. What's up, Corey? John also. Doyle Cash. So anytime you agree with Mike Tagliere, that's like one of the first guys that Tags brought up this week. So that video goes up on the Line Movement YouTube channel, but it's still on my podcast feed. We kind of go through what we think are the best plays at each position. He brought up Doyle, so I had to kind of take a second look at him. I like it a lot. Who was like someone that Phillip Rivers outside, like Phillip Rivers is not afraid to throw to his tight ends, right? I think there's actually a lot of value in that. Looking at quarterbacks that will throw to their tight ends. So I think that Doyle at 3,600, yeah, I'm into that, man. I like that a lot. 5,300 on FanDuel. Against Jacksonville, like there's going to be points scored. If for some reason Jack Doyle scores one of these touchdowns instead of like I guess the 30 touches we can assume is going to happen from the running backs, yeah, he could look like a great play at 3,600. I prefer Doyle to Ian Thomas for sure. Prefer him to guys like Greg Olsen at 4K. Yeah, I like it. I was going to play a lot of Hurst, but now I'm forcing Hockenson. Nice. I like Hockenson a lot too. So earlier this week, I was like all in on stacking up this Detroit and Chicago game. It makes it a little bit easier when we had Kenny Golladay for Detroit, so I backed away from that slowly a little bit. But I love Hockenson. I mean, if everyone wants to kind of go the Marvin Jones route, that's fine. But at 4,200, I think Hockenson is a really strong play in there. Hayden Hurst, he'll be a game stack guy for me. If I end up stacking the Seattle and Atlanta game, sure, Hayden Hurst makes a ton of sense. If he ends up playing even like 70% of that Austin Hooper role, he's just a fantastic value for sure. I love Hockenson at that price though. If you're just trying to like grab one piece of this game, I think Hockenson could definitely be a guy. Love the Jack Doyle call. I think that price is really bad. So shout out to the chat, the YouTube chat. Still weird to say. Ertz is now a priority on FanDuel with Boston Scott's savings. Are you playing Boston Scott on FanDuel, Steve? Interesting. Ertz is fantastic. 6,700 on FanDuel, 58 on DraftKings. I prefer Mark Andrews, though, in a vacuum. The price difference on DraftKings, though, or on FanDuel is huge. So I'm with you on that. On DraftKings, I love Mark Andrews today. I do. I think that if, like, I don't play George Kittle very often. I get nervous sometimes that the game will turn a little bit more run heavy for San Francisco. He'll end up blocking. I don't know. Kittle's a weird blind spot for me sometimes. So I struggle with Kittle sometimes overall at that price in general. So like past that tier, I do really like the idea of getting Andrews in some lineups today. I think Andrews is one of my favorite plays of the entire week. How's your $1,000 single entry going to look? So Rob, I'm actually considering rolling out like 4 or 5 teams this week on FanDuel. Maybe we're playing the 1,500 on DraftKings actually. So me, Peter Overzet, Michael Leone, we're doing a show every Sunday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern time. We're calling it the Tilt Space. So if you're having a bad day, come hang out with us on stream. But we're playing in the 1,500 on DraftKings. So I might actually expand a little bit more to playing like 5 teams on FanDuel, something like that. So I want to really sweat this DraftKings team with those guys. So we'll see. Dan Arnold versus Herndon. Herndon for me, Philip. Yeah. So Ben mentions the Lamar, Andrews, Ingram stack. Run it back with the Cleveland. I don't know, man. What do you think about Ingram? I don't play Ingram very often. What do we got Ingram at for touches? Oh, woof. Yeah, that's a tougher one for me. I think he's just okay. He's not like you're paying for the touchdowns, right? You're paying a premium for the touchdowns, I should say. Yeah. Does anyone like Irv Smith at 3,100? If everyone's just going to play Thielen, what if it ends up being Irv Smith? That'd be pretty crazy. Tilt's pace will be epic once SF Arizona goes nuts later in the day. I have to have at least one stack in that game, Steve. What do we think about Waller? It's a good question. Michael Proctor in the chat. So Waller is someone that at 5,900, he's expensive on FanDuel. He's more expensive than Ertz on FanDuel. I guess my concern is that this game gets out of hand and they don't have to throw as much. That's like my official stance on it, right? So for the person that was really upset that I said I was considering not playing Josh Jacobs, I guess I've backtracked a little bit. It does scare me a little bit that they'll get ahead, and then Darren Waller is it's a tough price point if he doesn't get there, right? All right, guys, we got about 15 more minutes. Let's talk about defense a little bit here. Defense, I think, is pretty straightforward today. On DraftKings, I have a really hard time not paying down for the Washington football team. Still weird to say. But at 2K against this Philly offensive line that's super banged up, I think the Washington D-line, super underrated. They're going to get pressure. Again, that's what I care about. But let's look a little bit deeper. So some quarterbacks that take sacks. Teddy Bridgewater. Actually, this is the opposite. Sorry. So Derek Carr, we got Kyler Murray takes a ton of sacks. This is interesting. I think that the 49ers defense, if you're paying up against Arizona, Kyler will take sacks. We know that. Not super interested in the Jaguars defense. Patriots defense, that's an interesting one against Miami and Fitzmagic. I like that a little bit. Saints at 2,400. I'm always kind of intrigued by these high total games, but I don't actively target Tom Brady because he's someone that's just going to throw it away. I've fallen into this trap before. Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, they're just going to throw the ball away versus taking a sack, right? They're not going to take a ton of chances. So I think that's interesting. Patriots defense, obviously, against Miami. Packers against Minnesota. I think that's an interesting one. This Minnesota, I don't think that their offensive line is anything special. It's definitely below average. Green Bay, an underrated, I think, pressure type of defense at 2,600. If we get them at this low ownership, the concern is just that Minnesota isn't going to throw enough for the passing attempts to be there. But I think that they're interesting as kind of a contrarian tournament play. I think on FanDuel, the Colts at 3,700 is very strong. They're another team that I think will pressure a lot, good game script, that sort of thing. Like, obviously what we want at defense is game script, so the other team has to really take chances. What do we think about the Eagles defense against Washington? It's probably a little bit overpriced on DraftKings, but this Washington offensive line is horrendous as well. Getting some leverage off of some of these the higher owned Washington guys. Like, we got to think about defense in that way also. Yeah, Eric brought up the Eagles. The Eagles. Yeah, I think that on FanDuel, I think I prefer the Colts in a vacuum. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, just dropped in the chat. Join us following in the show, Peter, Joe, and Dieter. Yeah, so we're going to be talking through the NFL slate with those guys in about 15 minutes. Be sure and check out link in the chat, link in the description, all that stuff. I'm going to be live 3 different times on Sundays, right? I don't know what I was thinking. Cam stacks. All right, let's talk some stacks. Let's go back to quarterback here. Cam stacks are tough, man. Like, who do you put with Cam? I think the problem with New England is we just still don't know exactly where the ball is going to go in certain ways. So I'm not really on the Cam stack. I think if you're playing Cam, it's probably naked just to get to other options. I'm struggling with Cam overall because he doesn't give us the savings that a Tyrod gives us, a savings that a Mitch Trubisky gives us. It's kind of in that weird mid range, and I don't like his weapons as much. Demi Bird, maybe. Yeah, Blake, I'm with you that he's going to throw a lot. I'm just like, I don't care as much about the volume at quarterback. I care about the efficiency, and I'm not sure the efficiency is going to be there. Let me ask you this, though. What do you guys think? Is Cam going to run as much this year? Like, is he finally healthy? Can he throw the deep ball? Like, that's my issue with it, right? So some other stacks. If you're here, I guess haven't been here earlier, I do like the Josh Allen stack a ton. That's one that I'm really focused on. I'm going to try and figure out a way to play some Lamar stacks with Christian McCaffrey. Is that possible on DraftKings? I know it is on FanDuel. Austin Eckler is a guy we didn't talk about. He's actually in a couple of my FanDuel lineups right now, my placeholder lineup. So I'm glad you brought him up, Andrew. I think Eckler's really interesting. So let's think of it this way. One of my biggest concerns with Tyrod is this offensive line. And if he ends up being kind of under siege, we've seen Tyrod just like check the ball down to his running backs, right? So maybe Eckler. Eckler's a guy that like he's been elite for us in the past at like even more expensive price tags than this. He's $7K. FanDuel, he's $7,700. So let me what do you guys think about Joe Mixon versus Austin Eckler? I think it's an interesting conversation to have, actually. I think I prefer Austin Eckler. If you got the 300, I don't know. He's probably going to touch the ball less times. That's really close. It's really close. So like in that range of touches, at least, Austin Eckler versus a guy like Kenyon Drake. If you got an extra $600, it's another 1K on FanDuel. But I like the idea of getting up to Austin Eckler a little bit. He's like a weird pivot off of Kamara, though. So like Kamara is definitely my preference there. Dalvin Cook significantly more expensive. It's interesting. I've got Mixon with more touches. That's true, Eric. Ryan, Ridley, Hurst, too much? Never too much, man. We're full stacking people here, especially if you're playing large field. I don't think it's bad to go 3 weapons, bring a guy back on the other side. I think game stacks are the way to go these days. What about Marlon Mack? Matt, I don't think he's going to touch the ball enough, man. I'm not sure exactly what that distribution is going to be for the Colts running backs this week. Favorite cash running backs, Ryan wants to know. So I'm not a big cash game player overall. I think that in a vacuum, sure, like these Boston Scott, Antonio Gibson plays, Josh Jacobs, these guys that have really high floors, I think that they're fine for cash games. I think overall, like if you don't really want to probably run into the Deshaun Jackson hammer at that ownership. He's 4,900. He's a great value and a great matchup, right? So I think he's in play for cash for sure. Terry McLaurin, those type of guys. I think if you're looking at quarterback, for me, it's probably a guy like Tyrod at 5,600 if you don't decide to go the roster construction with Lamar. I think that's it for me. Gavin James, you need 4 to 5 pieces from your game stack to take down a big GPP without the stone nuts. I mostly agree with that. What about Le'Veon Bell, GPP pivot? I'm not really on Le'Veon, Eric. Maybe he's the guy that ruins my day. I don't even have Le'Veon projected for like an insane amount of touches. Maybe that's wrong. It's just so inefficient, right? And I probably just contradicted everything I said today at the running back position, but I don't know. That team total, we know that's important, right? For touchdowns. Not really on Le'Veon. Marvin Jones, Odell Beckham, Hollywood Brown, start 1. Dropping shells. Marvin Jones, Odell Beckham, Hollywood Brown. This one's actually kind of interesting. I think it's Marvin. That's hard. In DFS, I think I prefer Hollywood. I think it's really close between Hollywood and Marvin Jones. If you're just looking at a projection, it's probably Odell. That's a tough one, man. That's a really tough one. If it's just season long, I would just say go with your gut. It's very close. Should I start Edelman or Stephon Diggs? Oh, I'm a Diggs guy. Shout out Matt Harmon being early on Stephon Diggs. I love it. Josh Allen paired with Diggs and Smoke, man. Don't forget about my boy Smokey Brown, Bo. Don't forget about that. You can bring it back with Herndon, bring it back with Jamison Crowder. There's a couple nice options on the Jets side that at least is going to see some volume. Yeah, I like Eckler, Zach. Pick 2, James Conner, Melvin Gordon, Le'Veon Bell. Woof. James Conner for sure. Not really on Melvin Gordon. But I haven't taken a huge look at him yet since he's not on the main slate, admittedly. Is this Joe answering 1v1 questions? What is this? We're going to get some people their one-on-one questions, Gavin. We got to give the people what they want. We got 72 people still on Twitch, by the way. If anyone's hanging out on Twitch, we are live streaming, answering chat questions on YouTube now. So if you come over to YouTube, toss a like on this video, consider subscribing, all those good things. That's where all the content's going to be outside of the content that is on the Line Movement YouTube channel. Find me on both. Hit that notification bell. Like if you're not sure where to find me, just hit that notification bell. You'll see when I go live every time. Mondays and Wednesdays at 3 p.m. Eastern time is when we do the live streams. And then obviously 9:30 a.m. Eastern time is the one you guys are at today. It's good stuff. McCaffrey is so expensive. I hope a lot of people think that because I think he's still okay in terms of price. Max Maximus. What a name. Sorry I'm late. Is Bryan Edwards a decent play today? Bryan Edwards. I think he's just all right, man. I don't know if he's like... I think I prefer Ruggs for sure. Yeah. Different price on DraftKings, though. Best flex K under 4K. That's a tough one, man. I love Doyle. Not that I try and actively flex a tight end. Best flex play under 4K. Like I'm not really trying to flex a non-running back typically, Andrew. You're still under Valorant on Twitch, by the way. Shout out Valorant Twitch. We do get some Valorant in on Mondays and Wednesdays. I should change that though, Trudon. Thanks for letting me know. Cam Newton or Fitzpatrick? Who's your pick for DFS? I think it's Cam Newton. Say one thing about AJ Green. AJ Green had his first full practice in years from what people are saying. So that's I think he's fine. I don't know. I don't love that game overall for passing. Would you rather pay up for a non-CMC running back or Lamar? That would depend, Drumcraft. I'm trying to make Lamar teams today. Let me make that very clear. Is Scott worth fading in GPP? I think so. Single entry for sure. Thoughts on Traquan Smith? I think it's thin. Kevin S. Morning, Joe. Thanks for letting us pick your brain. LV Carolina game stack. What do you think? I think it's interesting. I don't love the quarterbacks in that game, though, I guess is my issue. I think it's fine. There could be some scoring. I think you just want to hope that it's going to be a little bit more back and forth, which I'm not sure it's going to be. You finally got me to move over to YouTube after 4 reminders. Let's go. Spade, thanks, man. Appreciate it. We'll gradually bring people over. I know there's a lot of people that are probably sad about the Twitch thing. I apologize. Cup or Thielen? I'm on Thielen today. Lyrical. I love Thielen. I think Thielen's a fantastic play. Trubisky stacks? Gerard. I like the Trubisky stacks, actually. I think it's very easy to stack him, right? We know exactly who to pair with him. Like, you're out the door. pretty easily with Allen Robinson and Anthony Miller, right? You bring it back with either Marvin Jones or Hawkinson. It's a very easy stack to make, and it gives you a lot of flexibility with the rest of your salary. Marlon Mack versus Taylor, I don't know. I think if you're playing like a super large field tournament, just play both. Hope they get 30 touches on the ground, 35 touches on the ground. I think it's interesting. Is Rieger a solid pivot from Djax? I still think it's kind of thin, if I'm being honest. I'm just checking price, 4,300. But yeah, I mean, if he ends up being the one that scores, you pass everyone, right? So I think in larger field stuff, I could see it. Bisky is risky. I like that. All right, guys, final thoughts, final questions. We got about 3, 4, 5 minutes-ish. Jordan's going to yell at me if I'm late for this stream. Is Gurley playable? Sure, he's playable. I think he's playable in game stacks because like the way Gurley completely goes off is if that game gets out of hand, I think. I'm not a Todd Gurley guy. Like I'm like well documented as being like a guy. I just don't think Todd Gurley's super talented. Not that matters as much. He's 6,100 though, guys. He's not that cheap. I prefer Kenyon Drake at 64. I prefer Joe Mixon at 67 if you can get there. Or, I mean, I guess you just try and save with some of this other value. 6,100 on a slate like this. Gurley just seems unnecessary to me. Drake versus Terry. I love me some scary Terry, but if you're in the flex right now, I think it's the running back. It's Drake. And you get that 4 p.m. game for sure. Who is someone that I love that is uncomfortable? Great question, HR. Someone that I love that is uncomfortable. I like that question a lot. Hollywood Brown makes me uncomfortable a little bit, but I do love him. The Seattle stacks always make me uncomfortable. I'll say that. So like anytime that I like Seattle, I feel like I'm always on the other side of it. Like I always think back to the year where Doug Baldwin just was going crazy every other week. I'm pretty sure I didn't capture one good week stacking those guys. So if I like Seattle, you should probably get off them for sure. Yeah. I think that the Seattle stack makes me uncomfortable. I'll say that. Fitzmagic or Trubisky? I think it's Trubisky. And I love Fitzmagic. I think it's Trubisky for me this week. I think this matchup against Detroit is one we've seen him do a lot of good things, right? Pay up for McCaffrey or no? I mean, I'm gonna make it very clear. It's fine to play Christian McCaffrey, guys. You have my permission. Ruggs for me this week. I love Ruggs. I think Ruggs is really solid. What's the best defense to play on FanDuel Cash? From Bobby Sparks. I'm all over Washington overall. I think it's just too cheap on both sites. At 3,400 on FanDuel, it doesn't get much cheaper than that. I think that I think that the Colts are interesting at 3,700. Not like epically cheap over there. Those are the two cheap ones I like though. Will McCaffrey get 3+ TDs? Hey, if you let me know before lock, Zach, I'd be happy to put him in every single one of my teams. That'd be great to know. You will never play your Ruggs this week. You never will. Is that a challenge, brother? Chargers D, I think, is really solid, man. Play James Robinson, pivot off of Boston Scott. So Blake, I think that this is where I think people get a little bit too cute. Like I don't care about ownership at running back, like really at all. Never look at it. I might delete it from the data sheet because I don't think it's relevant. No worries, Bobby. Yes, Cody, let us know who the helicopter play was. Shout out Ian Hardis. I always forget he's at PFF now. Odell or Jonathan Taylor? I think it's Odell. Gurley does have a history of going off versus Seattle. I missed that one flash. Yeah, I don't really look at like the running back versus defense history type of thing. I don't think there's a ton of value in that. Danny Amendola in play if he suits up. Probably low ceiling. All right, guys. A couple more questions and getting out of here. Got to get ready for the line movement stream. Again, check out the link in the description below. Toss a like on this video. Consider subscribing if you found some value today. I will show you guys it one more time. This is the data sheet that is available for free at linemovement.com. Resources, NFL data table. Super easy. Hopefully you guys will join us on Mondays and Wednesdays at 3 p.m. Eastern time. That's kind of where we go through our first look. We go through a bunch of other stuff, bunch of amazing guests. Rich Rebar, Matt Harmon, Jake Seeley, Mike Tagliere, TJ Hernandez is going to join us this week. It's going to be a lot of fun, so make sure you join us for those streams. 9:30 Eastern time is where these ones will be. every Sunday morning. So appreciate you guys. Appreciate everyone on Twitch that made that move over to YouTube today. Anyone that's still kicking around on Periscope, the chat, focus, YouTube. All right, guys. I want to see, so I've got a lot of names here I recognize, which is great. I want to see some of these names in the chat. 14 minutes. Line Movement YouTube. Link in the description. I want to see, if you came over, let's blow up the chat, all right? Blow up that chat right away. So there's a link in there. I want to see you guys in a bit. Aaron Rasmus, 422 in here, only 218 likes. Hey, man, I'm not a math guy. That's pretty good, though. Just being here more than enough, Aaron. Appreciate you guys. All right? I will see you guys very soon. Good talk.